This is Module 4, Lecture 2. We're on the essence of, we talked a little bit about in the previous lecture about poor communication. We ended with the idea that your listening circle activity would kind of give you a better idea of what listening is all about, because we all say we should listen, we should do active listening, but the data shows clearly that most of us don't really listen all that well, myself included. But good communication, listening, is at the essence, as you can see, in terms of good communication. Listening is really one of the most crucial elements of good communication. You can't be a good communicator without being able to listen what the other person is saying, both orally and in terms of body language. So we don't interrupt. I do this too frequently. I'm trying to learn not to interrupt as much. You need to repeat instructions or repeat what you're saying for kind of optimal effect. Ask patient what they are going to do. Learn names. Follow up. Care about your patients no matter how unlikable they are. That's when you know you're a true professional, because as you know, and I've met many students over the years, of course not all of them liked me, and certainly I didn't like all of them, but when you're teaching a course, or whether you're a physician or a healthcare professional, not that you have to like the person, but you really have to care about them, and there's a difference there. You don't have to like someone to care about them. So a couple of quotes from Teddy Roosevelt back in the day. People won't let you care for them until they know you care about them. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So it's tricky business. We're kind of trying to teach you to be experts, so to speak, but if you let that expertness get away from you and don't really care about the people who you're communicating with, being an expert won't really mean very much. So there's a few approaches out there that are, a little more recent over the last 10 years, 5 to 6 years. One approach is called shared medical decision making. There's a good video. It's not very long. You can check it out on resources in Module 4. I think maybe from Dartmouth uses this. Their medical school uses this a lot in terms of the patient and the provider kind of collaboratively figuring out kind of some diagnosis or treatment of certain conditions. So you should check that out, kind of give you a better understanding of some of what we're talking about with this kind of sharing of decision making. Another one of your learning activities is called Body Language, Health, and Performance. Dr. Amy Cuddy at Harvard, I believe, has a good TED Talk that you have to watch, and there's a short article that you have to read. And then I really want you to get out there and kind of just observe your own body and the bodies of others, and when they're communicating, and what that body language may or may not mean. Some very quick, very basics. I'm not necessarily the expert on body language, but some key nonverbals are leaning forward. When someone leans forward, that typically means that they're getting interested or excited in something, and you need to pay attention to that, because many times that's what we're kind of after with people, is what gets you going, what gives you energy, what gets you excited. It's a very important part of both performance or the healing process. Making eye contact with individuals, and certainly smiling. And I'm smiling right now, even though you can't see me, because I so enjoy doing these lectures. Actually, I do. Although they're hard to put together. But anyway, that's an aside. So lean forward, make contact, smile. You can teach yourself to do these things. It's harder and harder because we're so used to looking down at our phone and texting, right? But there's lots of things you can do to get better at communicating. So that's kind of the essence of the kind of human connection in terms of poor communication, good communication, body language, verbal listening. Then we get into the environment. And this has received a lot of attention recently because of sustainability issues and a lot of work in terms of the outdoors. And so the environment has become more of a focal point in health, and that's a good thing, because the environment is a healing place, depending on how it's constructed and perceived. But the healthcare environment, hospitals, medical offices, I've got article after article that shows that in the past hospitals have been woeful at creating optimal healing environments, and medical offices are a close second. So whatever you can do when you get out there to kind of, if you're in charge of your own health professional company or whatever, if you're a chiropractor with your own office, create an office that's actually pleasant. And there's lots of data to show that this is very important, not only for people liking their experience, but for healing. So until recently, hospitals were designed to accommodate technology. So the biomedical model drove the environment. Now we're switching that. The environment is kind of driving almost the biomedical perspective, integrating. So environments are becoming much more aligned with the holistic movement of healthcare. Data shows when hospital rooms have windows looking out on the natural world, patients just heal more rapidly. And this can really, a lot of this can be found in reading number 9. I'm giving you the highlights, but there is some good stuff in that reading. I highly recommend that you get in there, and certainly your quiz questions for quiz 4 will come from some of that reading number 9 as well. But there are health and healing benefits of well-planned architecture. So now we even have architects getting into healthcare. We have architects who are focusing on healthcare. That's probably one thing you never thought about being able to do, right? You could be an architect and actually be in health promotion. So some really cool things happening, I think, in this whole area of environment. Healing is a journey, a movement from illness to health, and nature is a natural healer. So lots of examples in that reading number 9 that will give you some better ideas about what we're talking about with the environment. So as you become a professional, and again, you may have more schooling to do, but how are you going to interact and communicate with your clients? So that's the first question you need to ask yourself. I ask myself this all the time in terms of teaching. How do I do this? How do I interact with young people in the classroom, outside the classroom? And then 2, how can you design an environment to optimize healing, recovery, and optimal health? There is a good movie, it used to be on Netflix. Unfortunately, I think it's been removed, but if you can ever find it, called The Science of Healing. Dr. Esther Sternberg, an MD, a rheumatologist, it's created a really good kind of documentary on the effects of the environment and healing. So how are you going to interact and communicate with clients, and how are you going to design an environment? And these are things you need to consciously kind of think about and be aware of. Now on the home stretch here, Patch Adams also is a movie, as I talked about earlier, but he's a real person. The movie, of course, is fiction and kind of dramatizes some things, but that gets really into a lot of the essence of not only the environment, but also how people interact with each other to hopefully optimize healing. So Patch Adams, very important movie, I feel. Now keep in mind that if you're getting into the health professions, that you better really like what you're getting into, because there's some newer data coming out here, and these are all links that you could probably click on, I think, and get to. I may open up one of these, but I don't want to go too long. But poor working conditions for doctors, impact of physician stress is underestimated, physicians' moods affect quality of care. So there's lots of interesting things coming down the pike. For example, impact of physician stress is underestimated. A survey of physicians, 2,000 physicians, 87% said they were moderately to severely stressed. 63% said they were more stressed or burned out than they were 3 years ago. So being a doctor in our present state of our healthcare environment is not easy. So that's kind of one first idea. And then looking at working conditions. Adverse working conditions for primary care doctors, including time pressures and unfavorable organizational culture, may lead to stress, burnout, and ultimately to lower quality patient care. 53% of primary care physicians reported time pressure during physical exams. Only a quarter of the physicians, almost 25%, felt that quality was strongly emphasized in their practices. So again, be careful about what you want, because you might get it. You're going to have to work very hard to maintain a positive state of mind in some of the present conditions going on in our healthcare system. I'm not telling you to avoid it. Just make sure you're aware that it's not all the smelling of roses, for lack of a better term. You're going to have to work hard to create a happy, healthy work environment, both for yourself and your employees, or if someone's in charge of you. How are you going to kind of create that environment for yourself and for your patients? This not only affects doctors, but it also affects nurses. And I know some of you are probably interested in the nursing profession. It's a good profession. There's lots of jobs, but it's also a profession that can lead to stress and burnout. It can be prevented, but the medical environment isn't necessarily designed to optimize the the quality of life of nurses. So they now call this compassion fatigue. Compassion fatigue, a combination of secondary traumatic stress from witnessing the suffering of others and burnout. And it can lead the nurses to feeling sadness and despair that impairs their health and well-being. And obviously, if that's the case, it's going to reduce the quality of care, because not only are doctors' moods impacting quality of care of their patients, but certainly nurses' moods can impact the quality of care. So these are some challenges, not that they can't be overcome. And I'm not telling you not to go into these professions, but there's some complex interplays going on that you need to be aware of, and that's called compassion fatigue of nurses, and certainly with doctors as well. There's some issues with poor working conditions, stress, and physicians' moods. In conclusion, we've got a long way to go in providing an optimal healthcare experience. To a certain extent, that means that there's lots of room for improvement. So when you get a degree and you're out there working, really be careful about where you work. Pay attention to how people treat each other. Pay attention to the environment. It's a place where you want to go to every day. And then what will you do to contribute to transform healthcare experiences in a positive way? How will you maintain positive mood? How will you maintain this positive environment? How will you positively impact your patients or your clients? By listening, by caring. It's a lot more than knowing about the body. It's a lot more than knowing about the types of food to eat. It's a lot more than knowing about the way in which certain drugs impact immune functioning, for example. So start with yourself and take that out into the world. That's really kind of the bottom line that I can say, is work on yourself, work on how you interact with people, pay attention to body language, pay attention to environments. Don't just communicate via your phone, because you won't become a true health professional in that way. So start with yourself and take that out into the world. And just one last thing I want to end with, a couple minutes. There are some interesting jobs out there that some people have created and some companies have created, where if you are compassionate, if you do have empathy, if you do have knowledge, you do have good communication skills, you can put those to good use. I was reading a local paper. One woman with, I believe, a nursing background started up this home counseling service where she goes into the homes of patients and counsels them on all the trials and tribulations of whether it might be cancer treatments or whatever it might be. She calls it my healthcare partner. So of course this service isn't necessarily always covered by insurance, but again, these are new jobs. And then the last one is health and wellness coaching. It's the fastest growing profession in health promotion. Go to any job site like Indeed.com or Jobs in Higher Education or hpcareer.net. I kind of go up on these things just because I like to keep myself apprised of what's happening. And every other job is some kind of health and wellness coaching. And they don't always require like a nursing background. They require health promotion or kinesiology or exercise science, fitness type degrees, where if you can become certified as a wellness coach, for example, through wellcoaches.com, it's not cheap, but if you become more understanding of what it means to be a wellness coach or a health coach, there are companies out there who are hiring. Some of these jobs you can do out of your home. So again, if you've got a spouse who wants to move somewhere, you can take that job with you, so to speak. So there's lots of cool things happening in health promotion. So I don't want to make it gloom and doom as far as some of the issues of keeping your sanity when you're in these situations, but some good positions happening. So that's the end of Module 4, Patient-Provider Relationship, and that's going to move us into the last module of the course, which is Stress, Flourishing, and Health. And I kind of like to use both of those in the last module because it's not just a matter of coping with stress, it's a matter of flourishing in your life, and I like to end on a positive. And we'll do that in Module 5.